Hi.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for being here. My name is Carrie Axelrod. I work in the Student Success Center at UTSA, and we are excited to have Ruben Herrera with us. Ruben comes from a family of 5 and is a non-traditional student. He is a first-generation graduate at UTSA with a mechanical engineering degree. While maintaining the role of systems engineer in 2018, he hosted his first corporate workshop on the 5 dysfunctions of a team. And in 2019, he presented Handshake to interview at the SHIP National Conference to a standing room only crowd. Following his passion and professional experience, he launched Winning Hearts, Expanding Minds, focusing on personal growth and professional development. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ruben. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, UTSA, for inviting me out. This is an opportunity that's really close to me, being a graduate from the University of Texas myself. It's always nice to give back, but it's also nice to give back directly to the community that assisted you. So we're going to talk about resumes. This is a resume workshop. This is an informal gathering. So we do have topics. We do have topics that we're going to cover, but like I said, sit back, relax. And the other thing I want to say is that this is meant to be more interactive. I don't want to just be presenting information and then soaking it in and taking notes. There's going to be lots of opportunities to ask questions. And that's really where we'd like this particular presentation to go. There's also there's no definitive slides. So we're going to keep just going through the information until our time runs out. If there's key information that needs to be shared at the end, then we'll make sure to highlight it before we close out for the day. But for the most part, if we get stuck on one slide for 45 minutes, then that's where we stay, because we want to examine these thoughts thoroughly. So here's our first opportunity for interaction. This is the obligatory slide, the obligatory introductory slide. And so for those of you who are familiar with presenting, you'll know that whenever you make your introductory slide about yourself, you're kind of doing 2 things at the same time. One is you're attempting to create some relatability with the audience, those listening in, and then on the other side, you're trying to create credibility. So you're about to present some information, so you want it to be you want to be viewed as a professional within your field. So it's really insightful whenever you see somebody else's opening slide like this, you get an idea for what it is they're trying to present forward. So as I stated, we want some interaction here. So Karen, Harsh, if you guys could take a look at the slide, try to soak it all in. And then I was hoping to get 2 questions on anything you see on the slide. And then there's one thing that I'd like to definitely make sure gets said.
So I think I know most of the companies, but the 2 I didn't know. I was wondering if you can explain more about would be the John Deere and the Grand Retail.
Okay. So John Deere is a leading agricultural company. So they're huge in the Midwest. I'm pretty sure that as far as the United States goes, they're the #1 ag company in the United States. So they make, they're most famous for tractors. They also make combines, a variety of farm equipment. They also are in the construction industry. Where we down here in Texas are most likely to see John Deere, since we're not as huge an agricultural state. Where we're most likely to see them is if you can go to a dealer, but if you go to like a Home Depot or a Lowe's, you'll see that they have John Deere riding mowers there.
Yeah.
And so that's how you can become familiar with the brand. As far as Grand Retail Exchange is kind of on the other side. So I have my section broken up into 2 areas. One is my corporate career and the other is my entrepreneurial career, if you will. Grand Retail Exchange is my e-commerce presence. And so in 2020, when I left corporate America, and I don't know if everyone feels this way, but my real goal was to create a professional development style organization or outlet. The challenge I had with that is that those types of businesses typically don't produce an income for an extended amount of time, sometimes up to 5 years, sometimes up to 7 years. And so because of that, uh, I wanted to have something that would produce an income sooner. And so that's when I started Grand Retail Exchange, and it does something called retail arbitrage, but we also design our own products and we put them on the market.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So the thing that sticks out to me is SHIP, because I work with our student organizations. And so my question is, what have you gained from being involved in student organizations in a mentor capacity?
So, okay, so the reference is kind of a two-part question, right? What did I gain? So when I was a student, Carrie, I joined SHIP probably for many of the main reasons. Lots of students, I saw the opportunity, especially with the national conferences and the national conventions. I heard that they bring in, hundreds of companies, and they have a large career fair, and then you can go to these career fairs and you get interviews on the spot, and you get internships, and you can get jobs. And of course, that's, as a student, that's very appealing to me because that was the end goal anyway. So initially, that's why I got involved, was to, for lack of a better term, to take advantage of those opportunities. But what it did for me was it helped me, and I don't know if everyone has a similar story, but it helped me establish sort of a community there on campus. So as stated, I'm a non-traditional student. I was already in my mid 30s when I arrived. So at times it was difficult to relate to some of the younger students. We're just in different walks of life, but we were all able to come together with the unity of SHIP within there, and we were able to drive towards those unified goals. And I'm sure it's the same for, I'm explaining my gap to the average student, but I'm sure every student has some gaps, and they can come together within these organizations. Uh, when I think the mentoring part really kicked in once I stepped into the professional realm. So after, I got an internship with John Deere from a SHIP conference. And of course, that later led to a full-time offer. And then when I was looking for mentors at John Deere, the first place I looked was those who were registered in the SHIP, and I reached out to them. And of course, we were all kind of in the same organization, the same family. It made it very easy to connect with them. Some of them were part of my peer group, others of them were upper level management, but I never had any issues just reaching out to somebody in SHIP in that community and saying, hey, I have some questions about this. And they would take the time to answer or guide me through or provide direction. So uh, later in my career, then I switched roles, and then I became a mentee to contribute back to sort of what it had given me. So from pretty much from my junior year up to my current professional career, I've been a member of SHIP and participate in SHIP events. So it's done well for me, and I've seen it do well for a lot of other people, and I'm happy to contribute.
Thank you.
So Carrie, you actually asked the one thing that I wanted to cover, so there's no need for us to continue here. So let's go on to the next slide. So as we're moving forward, I want to talk about some pre-filters. So this is sort of a ground lane or ground setting for the topic we're going to talk about. And primarily, we're going to focus on two things. We're going to focus on the mindset, and we're going to do sort of a relative comparison between what we would consider the average student versus the average professional. So as we're putting those two together, we will see as we move forward how they relate to your resume. So taking a look at this picture, I wanted to get, sort of your gut feels for what is the mindset of this individual, the picture.
I believe one of the mindset would be, learning, absorbing as much as he can.
So receptive to learning. Absolutely. Carrie, what do you see?
So to me, I see someone who's graduating. And so the perspective that I would think is they are either looking for their first job after school or looking to continue in, higher education, or they've already secured it.
Right, right. So keeping those things in mind, right, as we talk about, so really it's like what has shaped some of those perspectives, right? What is the background? We're all in a sense products of our environment. And when you're a student, you have primarily operated in what is considered a supportive environment, right? A young adult. Uh, and that's where the entirety, for the most part of the environment, is set up for a win-win scenario. So this statement is true, obviously, for your parents at home. They have a vested interest in your success, so they want you to do well by yourself, and they're gonna input into you to help you achieve that outcome. And then in the scholastic system, it operates very similar. Now, I know there's some outliers, but I think for the vast majority of those involved in the educational system, they would like to see you succeed and they want to contribute to your success. And when you succeed, there's at least a portion of them that succeeds as well. You have a low level of responsibility. And again, I know among your peer group, you see varying levels of responsibility, but there's a huge gap between a 35-year-old executive middle manager and a student starting to enter the workforce. And that's sort of where I get the low level of responsibility. You have a wide range of opportunities. This is kind of what Carrie was touching on just a moment ago. There's so many options you can go from this point. And the other big thing to keep in mind is that you can afford to make mistakes, right? If you go down a path and let's say you lose 3 years or 5 years, and at the end of that, you realize, oh, this isn't the direction I wanted to go. It really can have no long-term impact on your career, because certainly you're going to get something valuable out of that time that you spent doing that, but you also have plenty of time to recover professionally, if it led you down the wrong road. Let's do another picture perspective. So this one is meant more to represent a professional. So what sort of mindset does this individual have?
I would say getting as much money as he can just so he can retire soon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say typically someone of, and I'm making a lot of assumptions here, but typically someone of this age, maybe on a set career path, maybe already have some goals figured out, maybe in a place of management, looking on that next step of retiring, less time left in their professional career, I guess.
Yeah, you guys both hit some great highlights. And so absolutely. So looking at this person and this, you're going to find that a lot of these bullet points are going to match up to exactly what you just said. This individual is most likely results driven, right? They're here to get a job done, and they are typically graded by the results of that job. They're going to have high levels of responsibility. So as you move into a higher level of your career, you're no longer responsible just for the things that you produce, but typically you're going to have direct reports and you're going to hold some level of responsibility for what they produce as well. And that's just on the professional realm. If you start looking at it on the personal realm, you maybe have a significant other, perhaps you have children, and there's also high levels of responsibility that get adopted into those areas. So those are probably the two largest shifts from going from a young starting professional to an already seasoned advanced professional. Of course, you're results driven and high levels of responsibility. The other thing is, you've had your share at this point of hardships and challenges. And then this is exactly what Carrie was saying. Your path has mostly been selected. You know, you're 20 years into your career, you know which direction you're going. It's in a sense, it's already been determined. So as we continue to move forward, you know, these were meant to provide some level of perspective as we look at the student mind versus the professional mind. So in this next section, there's varying degrees. So now we're shifting into perhaps the interview process, or maybe even the career fair recruitment process. And I know that when I was in university, I heard sort of this. Everyone typically would fall between these two spectrums, right? On one end, you have the student who is very confident, and perhaps some would argue is overconfident, and they'll say things like, you know, I'm the best. Any company would be lucky to have me. And then they'll say, you know, I can pick any company I want. I'm going to pick them. They're not going to pick me. And then on the other side, we had sort of the other end of the spectrum, which is individuals that were maybe underconfident. They didn't quite understand how their skills transferred. They felt like they were bad at interviewing. And to be honest, they maybe thought that they weren't ready for that next step. Harsh, you're a student, Carrie, you work with a lot of students. Do you think this is pretty accurate to sort of the varying degrees of conversations you've had with students as they're moving forward?
Yeah, from my perspective as a student, yeah, we kind of think as it says right there, and then I mean, it's also because we haven't entered the job field yet, so we are really highly optimistic, and we're like we have that passion to do things.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think this is accurate to like conversations that I've had. I will say that majority of the ones are hitting on those bottom three than the top two. But I've definitely
Mhm. Okay. So as we look at now, think of as we think of these things in the perspective of the student, and then we go to the recruiting professional. This is some of the perspective they hold. And Carrie, I don't know if you have a lot of experience hiring or recruiting or being involved in that aspect. So if you do, I'd love to hear your input as well. But the recruiting professionals that I've talked to and the recruiting that I've been involved in, when they are looking at a student, there are and I don't want these to come off harsh or as demeaning. They're not meant to be that way. In a sense, they're just solid facts that are computed into the equation, if you will. So one is the student is an unproven commodity. You know, they say they're very good and they should promote themselves as being very good, but we're not 100% sure where they stand in that area. There's a question of, will this individual fit well with the team? You know, every company has a culture, and typically the recruiters are very well in tuned with that culture, and that's also part of the hiring process. They want to get somebody who's going to fit in well with the existing culture. How mature is this applicant? So, you know, there's levels of maturity that go beyond showing up to work every day, making sure you do your job well. There's also how you spend your time at work, right? Employers don't want someone who's going to be on their phone for 50% of the day or watching videos. You know, they want applicants who are actually going to work, and that speaks a lot to your maturity. There's there's a there's a coachability when you come in. When you come in, you are not familiar with the processes, so they want to know, okay, how open and willing are you going to be to learn these new processes as we move forward? And the thing that I was told, and I actually thought this was rather interesting, but you know, a lot of the recruiters in HR that I work with, they explained, hey, at the end of the day, it actually costs us more money to hire the wrong person than to just leave that role open. And so on that, if they're not going to force a fit with someone who they think isn't going to work. So if they have 10 applicants and none of those are going to work, they're going to reject all 10 of them. So taking a look at the recruiting and professional side, are there any areas that are surprising, or is this pretty much what you thought was happening on the other side of the table?
So from my perspective, I would definitely agree with the very first one. I do think based on every mentor, like I usually talk to mentors, and that's what their input is. That like you need to prove yourself, and there's like that's how you do by joining clubs and showing that you can
Mhm.
through your resume. And then the fourth one, which is like how coachable, is usually measured by how much is he willing to learn from new things, how many new things is he hoping to achieve, kind of.
No, that's good. So this isn't the first time you've been exposed to this. That's good to hear.
Yeah, definitely from a student side, never from a recruiting side, definitely. um I'm actually surprised by the very last one, because according to me it was like it's better to have someone than no one, but that's something which is
Mm.
different from what I thought.
So Harsh, I can speak to you from the perspective of engineering. I don't know if you're an engineering student,
Hmm.
but when I was hired, uh, one of the first things they did was they covered all of the relocation costs. So we had a home here in San Antonio, and then we were shifting up to the Midwest. So they covered all the expenses for the move. So they had movers come in, you know, and the company itself paid for all of that. Then once I got to John Deere, they had to set up stations, right? So they had to purchase me a brand new computer. They had to set up a station for me. They had to make space available, and then just like most companies, there's an entire series of initial training that happens almost the entire first year.
Right.
And so imagine that a company hires someone and they attempt to force fit, and maybe they leave after 1 year or 2 year, then all that initial investment in a sense gets lost.
Mm.
And so that's typically when they're assessing a new hire, that's also some of the factors that they're putting into play.
Mm.
Yeah, I would say that this is highly accurate. I think it's a shift in the way that students need to approach things, because the job search process can be really emotional, and it can be
Yeah.
very draining for students, or for anybody. And I think, like, the other thing that we need to talk about is sometimes these processes take a long time, and so if you don't hear back from someone after you apply in 2 weeks, that's not abnormal, especially in higher education, which is what my perspective is. It just takes forever. And so it's a draining process. And I think people need to think about it from the company's perspective as well. So I think all your points are super accurate.
Carrie, that's something that I'm glad you mentioned that. That's something that we hadn't talked about. There really is a lot of emotion going into that application and hiring process, and it makes sense why it's present, because there's so much culminating on that moment, right? I mean, we've just gone to school for X amount of years, for 4 years, for 6 years, for 8 years, uh, and we're told that the specific reason for that we're going to school to get this higher education is for a job. And so if you start getting to the point where you start applying for jobs, and you're not, maybe you're not hearing back right away, like you said, or maybe you're having some applications rejected, it's easy to understand why there's so much, because we've put so much weight on that moment, you know. uh and I think that's a great point to bring up. Thank you. So we got the mindset stuff taken care of, right? And we can always return to it if we have some more questions. But now I wanted to talk about some resume paths. Before we get into the resume paths, there's something, there's a phrase that we have in my house called the game within the game. And as we look at resumes, I just want like to send a reminder that the real game, the one that we're trying to win, is to get a job or to get an internship. It's not to build the most outstanding resume on the planet. Your resume is a tool that is used. It is one of the games within the game to getting your job or your internship. The other important thing, because I know we hear a lot of mixed messages in regards to our resume, like it should have this format, it should have this font, this is the way it should be laid out. In regards to your resume, from my experience, you know, you really want two big things, right? You want a resume that accurately represents your capabilities. Number one, accurately and honestly represents your capabilities. And then number two is you want to have something that you're comfortable sharing. You know, whether that has a picture on it, whether it has a particular format, you want it to do those two things at the end of the day. You want it to accurately share your skills and talents. And then you also want to be comfortable sharing that with just about anyone. I think if you can hit those two, then whatever the format, you're not going to have too many issues handing your resume to somebody. So the two paths of your resume, there's two primary paths. There's going to be the electrical resume path, and then there's the contact resume path. So on the electrical side, this is going to be laid out in such a way that you see a job posting online with one of your favorite companies or one of the companies that you are focused on. And it's like, oh, you know what? I think I would be perfect for that position. So you go through the process, you create your login, and you fill out your information, you upload your resume. At that point, it goes through an application tracking system. What that application tracking system is looking for is for keywords. There's going to be hard and soft, and we're going to go through these in a little bit more detail. And then I'll talk about some of the tools that are available to you right now to help you with this end of the process. The other area we're going to cover is the contact resume path. And this is, it really covers two scenarios. It ends in a face-to-face contact, but either A, you were recommended for a position. So whether you have a friend or someone in your network that sees a post and says, hey, I think that you'd be a great fit. They go talk to somebody, and then your resume is sort of fast-tracked right into their hands. That's one of the ways. The other way that we're going to talk about is something more analogous to the career fair itself, where you are walking up to somebody directly, handing them your resume, and you've immediately made that face-to-face contact. So let's cover the electronic resume path first. So you guys may already be familiar with this. So when you fill out your application online, it's going to go through an application tracking system. This is something that's very common across the board. And essentially what it is, it's a keyword search of your resume. So you upload your resume, and there are certain skills or keywords that are already being looked for by the company. And they've given you hints to what they are during the application process. And so what it does is the sequence of events is you submit your resume, it does the keyword search, and your resume results in a score. After that score is produced, there's an internal algorithm that'll then determine whether you should, whether your resume should be passed on to a human being for further examination. And once it hits the human, that's what I'm considering the pivot point, right? Because now you are actually in an opportunity area. Before then, if you're canceled out by the algorithm, then you never really had the opportunity. Once you hit the pivot point, then you move forward. You're either going to get a phone call, you're going to get an interview, or you're going to be removed from the candidate pool. Is this common knowledge, Arch? Is this something you've seen before or something that's been shared?
Yeah, I think I've heard about it a lot from, the professors and definitely the mentors. That's
Good.
something I guess many people know now.
Good. So in the application tracking system, it's looking for keywords, and for the most part, the industry has sort of hard skill examples and it has soft skill examples. So there is some crossover in some of the words, but usually Hard skills are related to a particular discipline, so engineering, accounting, or to a specific skill. The other thing that's important is that they typically produce a tangible result at the end. Some examples of that are going to be designing, engineering, accounting, electrical, mechanical, and some of the others listed. This list is not all inclusive, but it's to provide some examples of what typically would be found by the algorithm as your hard skills. On your soft skill sides, these are primarily related to communication and relationship based. So many times these don't produce an outcome within themselves, but what they do is they create an enhanced platform for production. So these are the things that smooth the way. If you know how to negotiate well, it's easier to design, for example. If you know how to make partnerships well, then that helps you with the accounting side. And so that's how these work in conjunction. Keep moving us forward, trying to be respectful of our time here. So here are the tools as promised. So there's two major tools right now already at your disposal at the University of Texas. The first is VMOC. So we talked about, you know, there's an algorithm in a sense grading your resume, and that similar form of technology can be used to help move you forward. So with VMOC, what you can do is the you can get the post itself, you copy and paste the post, you put it into a box, and then you can get your resume and put it into a box. And then what it does is it'll produce an outcome that tells you, yes, this is how well your resume matches this particular post. And then from there, you can start to tweak your resume to match the post better and better. And that way, when you do the final submittal on the final submittal on their website, you have a much higher opportunity of making it to where an actual human being will take a look at your application and your resume. If you still have concerns or maybe need some guidance on how to put together your resume as far as finding relevant information, like, okay, I don't fully understand how this skill could transfer into the professional world. Maybe you have that question. Maybe you have questions on format. You know, should this be bold? Where should my address be? Should I list my GPA in this point? Then I highly recommend you go to the UTSA Career Center. They have professionals there that have been writing resumes. They probably helped assist thousands of resumes already, so they've seen a lot. If you need help or guidance in that area, that is definitely a resource that is available to you now, and I would take advantage of that. So, Carrie, I know you're involved in this area. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes. So the Student Success Center also puts on presentations like this. And so please check your emails for the weekly update to see what's going on. And the Student Success Center can help you with, you know, connecting you with different resources if you're not sure where to go.
Perfect. So now we're going to talk about the first part of the contact resume. So within the contact resume, this is the one we talked to. You have an advocate who has helped you in the placement of your resume. So they've said, hey, I have this good friend, Harsh, and I think he would do a great job at this particular position. And so they recommend you, and your resume goes right into someone's hands. So you're either asked to apply or you have an advocate that is working on your behalf to move your application forward. So the sequence of events, as you can see here, you hit the pivot point much sooner. And that's where you have a human taking a look at your information and determining what is the next move. Do you need a phone call? Do you need an interview? Or do you need to be removed from the candidate pool? The second area is career fairs. And I know that at times career fairs can be sort of nerve wracking, and that's because they're so intense and they're exciting. You have so many other applicants and they're right in front of you, and you know, everything's happening. for myself, this was one of my personal favorite environments because you would get to that pivot point so quick. Not only that, during a career fair, you have the opportunity to talk to, 5, 6 companies, depending on how large it is. Uh, and with each of them, you can reach this pivot point. Before we move, there's a lot that can be learned by operating in a career fair. And I'd really love the opportunity to share more of that information with you. When I was at the SHIP National Conference just a few years ago, I did a presentation called Handshake to Interview, and it was specifically centered around how to operate in a career fair. And what I'm going to share with you now is by no means the bulk of information, but it's a single page overview of what that workshop entails. So the first is you have to, as in this scenario, you are handing your resume to an individual and they are looking at it right in front of you. And so what you want to do is you want to help walk them through that. And we call that framing your resume. So instead of just standing there quietly, you actually would walk them through the highlights of what your resume says, and bring light to some of the areas that you think are applicable to their business model. The second part is to have a conversation. After they put your resume down, this particular interviewer, this particular person that you're speaking to right now is not interviewing you. In a sense, they are the pivot point. They themselves are. They're determining what should happen next with you, whether it should be a phone call, whether you should go to interview, or whether you should be removed from the candidate pool. And so I know sometimes we can come off really strong with them and just want to do sort of a skill dump on them. Oh, I can do this, I can do this, and I can do this, or this is why it would be great to hire me. But really, the best thing you can do is just have a regular conversation with this individual, because they're trying to get a feel for who you are. More than just your skill set, as we're talking about in the mindset, but also how well you're going to fit into the environment and your levels of maturity. These are all the things that they're trying to capture within that moment. And if you're flooding them with everything that you can do, they're not going to be able to see those other areas. So regular conversation. And then to close out, one of the things that I did wrong my entire beginning career fair was, after we're done speaking, I'd say, oh, okay, great, thank you. And then I would shake hands and I'd leave. And I never in a sense closed or tried to get to the next step, which again, the goal was to get the interview. At the very least, the goal is to get the job, but you got to go through the interview first. And so we developed something called the 3 likes and the no that means yes. And so what you could say is, hey, I like you, I like this conversation, and I like the company. And so you've already set the stage for you're closing out this positive interaction. And you're letting the other individual know that you felt like it was a positive interaction. And the no that means yes, you would simply say, Carrie, is there any reason from our conversation, Carrie, is there any reason why you think we shouldn't move forward from here? And presumably Carrie offers an affirmative, no, I don't see any reason. Because she said no, then that means yes, we're ready to move forward. And so you've done a lot of hard work to get to this point. Don't leave it to chance. It can be scary, but you want to get yourself off the pivot point. So I know that was a very short synopsis of it. Like I said, if we generate interest, I'm happy to put on the entire program as we move forward. So in the sake of time, I kind of blasted through some of those last slides, but the next slide is the final one. So before we close out, is there anything you guys want to go back to, or is there any information that you would have liked to have seen covered?
Yes, I had a question. So everything you covered was mostly up until you get your first interview. One thing I was gonna ask was, like, apart from, let's say, like for you, you were able to connect through the UTSA mentor-mentee network. What other good places are there which you can use?
So you're asking, in addition to sort of student organizations, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Career Center usually has a pretty good pulse I know I went to the Career Center a few times. The Career Centers typically have a pretty good pulse because as far as organizations, they're when I'm an outside organization and I'm looking to hire someone from a university, there's
Mhm.
two major routes that I would go. And one of those is either I would go through an organization like SHIP or NSBE. I would go through one of those SWE, and I would work my contacts through that area. Uh, but the other, and I would imagine that this pool is much larger, is to go through the University of Texas Career Center itself, right?
Mm.
If I don't have, if my company doesn't have a direct affiliation with one of those groups, then I'm going to go to the Career Center. So I would say that of the places on campus that you're most likely to run into those opportunities, those are the two.
Okay.
Carrie, is there a third or a fourth that I'm missing here?
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. The Career Center works with the Student Success Center, and the Student Success Center works with the Career Center. So we share contacts, we do joint programming. The other thing is going to the career fairs.
Absolutely.
So taking advantage of that. And Harsh, I also know you're already on Roadrunner Network. So lots of tools there.
Okay. And another thing was, now that there are so many online networks, like I have a LinkedIn, I have a Handshake, I have a Roadrunner network. So like, there's so many things. How many do I keep updated, or do you think I should just keep one updated and kind of connect everything to like, oh, go there kind of, or like, do you understand my question?
I do. So Harsh, in the obviously to maintain access to some of the things that Carrie was talking about,
Mhm.
you want to maintain your UTSA accounts active,
Right.
correct?
Mhm.
Just so you don't miss any opportunities that come through that portal. What I have found is on the outside corporate world, it seems to be LinkedIn, at least at this specific phase in history.
Okay.
LinkedIn is the primary. So when I would go to conferences or when I would meet other professionals, uh, and if I wanted to reconnect with them or they wanted to reconnect with me, about 90% of the time that second connection happened was through LinkedIn. So if you are going to have one other profile active, I
Mhm.
would have the LinkedIn. The rest, the other profiles, I would say are subject to however much time or effort you want to put into them personally.
Okay.
I would say the ones that are vital are definitely the ones that open those opportunities at the University of Texas, San Antonio for you, and definitely your LinkedIn.
Okay. Yeah, I see.
Yes, I completely agree with that. Also, I know it's kind of a lot like Handshake and Roadrunner Network, but LinkedIn communicates with Roadrunner Network, so you can also connect your profile there. But I 100% agree, LinkedIn is.
I mean, I do have those connected, but for, if I need to post something, I need to post it on LinkedIn first. And it doesn't directly go on Handshake. I need to update, like post it separately. And like I would do it few times, but then eventually it's like, you know, it gets too much. And I don't know if I want to update everything. Like, do you understand what I mean? There's just too many places to update, and I'm not sure where to update, when to update, and stuff.
Yes, yeah. In that case, LinkedIn.
Mhm.
Well, everyone, there is my contact information both on the personal and professional side. So uh, please feel free to reach out to me anytime. We can connect on LinkedIn. I do answer questions or general inquiries that come that direction. Uh, More on the professional side, if you're interested in some development coaching directly, then please feel free to contact me through the business end of Winning Hearts, Expanding Minds. There's my availability.
For sure. Yeah, I gotta follow. Thanks a lot for your time today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, I'll probably leave. I need to do something soon, I guess. But yeah, thanks a lot.
Good meeting you.
Mhm.